Welcome back, boys and girls. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to use the new Animations API with Jetpack Compose Beta. So specifically, what we're going to be doing is building this screen right here, this very simple app where if I press launch, this rocket will launch to the upper right-hand corner, and this animation will repeat over and over and over again infinitely. If I press stop, the rocket stops and kind of goes back to that initial state. So the starting point that I'm going to be working with in this project, you could just go check out the code from version control. There'll be a link down below. Or if you want to do it yourself, you can just, create a new project and just follow the setup here with Jetpack Compose setup. So go to this URL and follow this setup. This shows you everything that you need. And if you do this, you'll be pretty much in the same state that my app is in. So just, get all these dependencies and you should have no problems. Or again, like I said, just go down below. There'll be a link to a Git repository where you can get this code. So the only thing that's different than as if I was to go up to file, new, and just create a new project is I have no action bar selected in themes.xml. So if you go to values, go into themes, both, the night and day theme, both of these just add no action bar. So we have no action bar in our app, and I can close that now. And also I have 3 image resources in this project. So I have rocket number 1 here, rocket number 2, and then initial rocket. So rocket number 1 is exactly the same as rocket. Let me actually zoom up a little bit here. Rocket number 1 is exactly the same as rocket 2. Just the flame down here is a little different. So you can notice that the big tail end of the flame is on the right hand side. Whereas if I go to rocket number 2, the big tail end flame is on the left. And also these sort of like little sparks are in different positions. This is what allows us to give it that look as if the flame is changing during the animation. We're basically just going to be oscillating from rocket number 1 to rocket number 2, backwards and forwards over and over again, unless of course it's in the initial state where there is no flame. Also, obviously, we're going to be animating the position because it's, moving from the bottom corner up to the top corner. All right, so let's close these resources and we're going to go into main activity. There's only a single, Kotlin file in this project, and that's main activity. That's what I have open here. I have a constant value called tag, and it's just says app debug. We're going to be using that for debugging. Other than that, I'm just saying set content, and inside here, we're going to, build our animation, build all of our composables. So I'm going to be doing this in a 3-step procedure. Step 1 is just building the rocket, animating the flame. Step 2 will be animating the flame plus the position up into the top corner. And then step 3 will be adding that launch button to either, stop the animation, start the animation, all that. So 3 steps. We're going to be going through each of them individually. In the first step, I'm going to show you pretty much the only animations stuff that you need to know. So after you watch part 1, if you're like, okay, Mitch, I'm good, I don't need to see the rest, you can just leave or go look at the source code. You don't have to watch the whole video. Totally up to you, but don't forget to leave an engagement. Make sure to go down there and leave a like if you only watch up to part 1 and you go and look at the code and whatever. I'm going to start by adding a box with constraints composable. It's not going to be apparent why I do that right now, but we're going to be using the maximum height and the maximum width later on when we do the position animations. So box with constraint, I'm going to add a modifier to this. So do modifier equals modifier dot fill maximum size. And then I want to, I don't know why it gave me a double import there. Fill maximum size and then do dot background. So dot background, and give the background a color of black. So just color dot black. That'll make it look like our rocket is flying through space. Now I'm going to call a composable inside of the box with constraints called rocket. Obviously we haven't built that yet, so we're going to build that right now. Scroll down and let's create this rocket composable. So add composable fun rocket. It'll take no arguments. The first variable that I'm going to initialize will be a value, and it's going to be a painter object. This painter object is what is going to be, this is how we're going to load our images. So just kind of leave that there for now. Just remember that that's how we're going to set our image resource. Now we're going to get into the animations stuff. So the API, like I said, the animations API has changed significantly for the better. It's much simpler now to animate between states, between floats, between DP values, between anything really. And we're going to be animating between float values. So initial float value and then a final float value. Using the new animations API, you want to start by creating an infinite transition object. So transition, and you can initialize it by going remember infinite transition and just initialize that. So this will be the object that is kind of at the top level of all of your animations. You can essentially create any number of animations from this infinite transition, but that's probably too much to handle right now. So let's just work on a single animation. So now I want to create the state or the thing that I'm going to animate. For us, we're going to create something called an engine state, or create an object called engine state. I want to call infinite transition animate float is what we're going to use. But notice that there's different animations. There's animate float, animate value, animate color. Animate value is like if you want to animate a custom sort of state class. Like if you look at the definition here, it takes a type of T, initial value T, target value T, but you have to provide a bunch of other sort of classes like a two-way converter in order for it to understand how to convert or how to animate the custom state that you're using. We're keeping it simple. We're just going to animate float. This is very simple. You know, you just add the initial value. So I'm going to say 0f for 0, and our target value is going to go up to 1. So it's going to animate from 0 to 1 through the duration of our animation. Now for the animation spec, I can write infinite repeatable, and inside infinite repeatable, I can pass an argument called animation. I'm going to use a tween animation. Tween is like the most simple type of animation. There's different types that you can specify. Like if I control click on here, there's tween, there's spring, there's keyframes. I went over these in the other animation video that I made, I don't know, probably about a month ago. I'll hopefully remember to put a link up somewhere. And I talked about these different types, but tween is pretty much the most simple because you can just specify a duration, specify a delay. So a delay in between the start, the finish of the first one to the start of the second, and so on and so on. And then different types of easing. So that's like, does it start fast and end slow? Does it start slow and end fast? Just different options for the tween animation. So the tween is the most simple. Just kind of remember that. So I'm going to specify a duration of 500 milliseconds, an easing type of linear easing. So it doesn't start fast or end slow or anything kind of fancy. We're just doing linear, meaning it's going to never change its rate. It's just going to go from 0 to 1 at the same pace throughout the entire duration of the animation. So you can see that this is like way simpler than how it used to be. Just to remind you, I'm going to show you the source code for the MVVM beginner course. I'm going to show you what one of the animations actually looked like. So I went to like a previous branch. What you had to do, like if you recall, is we had to build like this animations definition class where you define like the states, and then you had to, you know, use these prop keys. Then you had to build the transition definition. You had to build the transition using the transition definition, and then you weren't even done yet. Then you still had to like execute the animation. So here, let me scroll down to where that would be happening. See, like there, that would be like technically, I guess, quote unquote, executing it, creating the transition. There was just a lot of stuff here. Now this is pretty much all you do. You know, I create this infinite transition using this, remember, infinite transition constructor, and then, you know, just create some kind of a thing that I'm animating. Pretty simple. Obviously, animating custom states would be more complicated. This is a simple example, but it's not that much more complicated. So definitely a big improvement in terms of the simplicity of the animations API. So now how can we make our, you know, our rocket flame oscillate between the two different images? So really what this is going to do is, let me print a log just so you can maybe see what this is going to look like. So I'll just print the engine state dot value, and you can see what this is going to look like before we do that. So let me run the app and take a look. So here it is right here. I'll filter on app debug. So what we have is our animation running, and you can see it just goes from 0 to 1 in a linear increments. So like there's point, probably the smallest one is right here, and it goes all the way up to almost to 1, and then it just restarts. So this is what it looks like. So how can we, you know, tell it to use one image for half of the time and another image for the other half of the time? Because that's really what we want to do here. So we can write some simple logic to do that. So I can just say, if the engine state dot value is less than or equal to 0.5 f, then I can say resource would equal painter resource, and I'm not sure why my Android Studio keeps adding like an A character to the default field values. If someone else is having this issue, comment down below and let me know, because it's pretty annoying. So r.drawable, and I'm going to say rocket1, and not sure why it's not giving me the import. There we go. My Android Studio was having troubles importing that. So anyway, we want to use the first image in that case, and then otherwise I would say, you know, resource equals painter resource and do the same thing. See, there's that A again. I don't know why it is adding that. So now r.drawable and do rocket number 2. So that's how it's going to oscillate between the two images. It's pretty simple. And we're just checking to see if it's less than, 50% basically, because it's going from 0 to 1, then it's going to be this image. If it's greater than 50%, then it's going to be this image. Pretty simple way to choose between which image is showing. Now use an image composable, open this up, get this import. We'll set a modifier equal to modifier dot width and just say 200 dp for the width and do height and also do 200 dp. So our image will be 200 dp wide, 200 dp high. And then do painter equals that resource. So painter equals resource. And we have to set a content description and we'll just say this is a rocket. So there we go. That will be our image and it should be oscillating between the two. So let's run it and take a look. So there's our rocket and you can see it looks like the flame is doing stuff. It's just bouncing back and forth between the two images that are available. So in a nutshell, in the simplest possible example, that is the new Animations API. Much simpler than it used to be. So if that's all you want to see, just how to sort of basically use the Animations API, you could walk away from this video right now, but don't forget to leave a like and leave some engagement down below. Now we're going to continue to step 2 for those of you who are sticking around, and we're going to animate the position of that rocket and move it from like the bottom corner up to the top corner. First, come up to the top here and create a new value. This will be the modifier that we're going to use to manipulate the position of this rocket. And we'll need to create another animation. So right now we have the engine state animation. We need another animation for the position of the rocket. So let's do value position state and set that equal to infinite transition, animate float again, just like we were doing before. Now for this one, we want to go from 0 to 1 again, so exactly the same, but it's going to differ with respect to the animation spec here. So we're going to use Tween again, open this up and do duration in milliseconds and set this one equal to 2000 because moving from the top to the bottom in 500 milliseconds is just going to be too fast. So now let's set some easing and looks like I forgot. This should not be Tween. This needs to be infinite repeatable and then Tween inside of here. So animation spec or animation and then set that equal to the Tween. I skipped a step there. So really these two are almost the same, engine state and position state, they only differ with respect to the duration. They're still going from 0 to 1. This one's going from 0 to 1, infinite repeatable, Tween, linear easing, all the same. The duration is the only difference. So now how can I, animate the position using this position state? Well, let's come down below our engine state sort of logic here where we're getting our resources and let's set that modifier. So say modifier equals modifier.offset. And now I have access to the X position and the Y position, and we can change these things and just animate this. And this will be the position of the rocket. So take this modifier and paste it down here. Now we need to, figure out how we're going to get, I guess, like a percentage of the total screen width or the screen height that we can then manipulate. Well, we're going to be using the box with constraints. So that's what this is for. Box with constraints gives us access to, the maximum width, the maximum height, and that's the screen maximum width or screen maximum height. So we can pass these as arguments to the rocket function. I'll just say max width, and this will be a DP value. Get that DP import, and we'll also say max height, and that will be also a DP value. So now I can use these to sort of percentage-wise manipulate where the position of the rocket's going to be. So let's start by keeping it really simple. I'm going to say maximum width for the X, and let's just multiply this by our position state. So say position state.value. Remember, it goes from 0 to 1. So that would mean that our maximum width here, or our X position, is going to go from 0 all the way up to the maximum width. If that's not clear to you how it's going to manipulate the X position all the way to the maximum, let me show you here. So here's the phone screen. You have an X and a Y coordinate system. We want to go from essentially the position, I guess, 0, 0 to start, and we want to move the rocket all the way over to, X max and 0. Let's say that. And remember, our state value is going from 0F all the way up to 1F. So if we take the maximum width, so we'll just say max, I'll say max W, multiplied by any number in between 0 and 1, you'll get a a relative percentage of that maximum width. Like if you did, you know, max W multiplied by, let's say 0.5, that's half of the width. If you did max W multiplied by 0.75, that's 75% of the width. So as our animation progresses, it's going to go this way over the duration of the animation. Now, Y is a little different. Y, we want to start at Y max, and as we progress through the animation, we move to 0. So like our starting position is this, 0 and Y max, that's the starting position, whereas our final position is going to be X max and Y is 0. So X animates from 0 to X max, and Y animates from Y max to 0. They're basically opposites of one another. So for the Y position, we can say maximum height, and we want to then subtract maximum height multiplied by position state dot value. So the initial position will be maximum height, and then as it progresses, this value is eventually going to equal this value, so it will progress to 0. So that's how we're going to do this. And this isn't perfect, by the way. There's going to be an issue with this, but we're going to talk about the issue after we run it. And it looks like I'm getting a warning up here. Oh, it's because I didn't pass the maximum width. So maximum width and maximum height equals maximum height. You know, also we could create a variable for the size of the image. So we can just say, I don't know, rocket size, and set that equal to 200 dp, and then just copy that and pass that down here. So 200 dp and 200 dp. All right, let's see what this looks like. Okay, it looks like our rocket is sort of doing what we want it to. It's definitely flying from kind of the bottom-ish all the way up to kind of the top-ish. The issue here is with how this image is aligned in the UI. And I think if I draw a border on this, it'll become much more apparent to you. So come over into our image here and just kind of clean this up a little. Let's add a border to this and just do, you know, width equals, I don't know, 5 dp, and say color equals color.red. So I think if I run this now, it'll become apparent to you what the problem is. So as you can see, what is happening here is the image, the top left corner of the image is aligned to the corner, and that, so really like it's doing what it's supposed to. The API is doing what it is expected to do. The top left corner is kind of the origin point of the image, and that starts here and ends right there. So what we want to do essentially to fix what this looks like is we want to move the image over half of the image width, and we want to move it up half or a whole amount of the image height. That way it'll start in this position here and it'll just kind of look better. So how can we do that? Well, first let's remove this border, because that was just for kind of taking a look at it and showing you what was happening. Now what I want to do here is instead of moving towards the maximum width, I want to move to maximum width minus the rocket size. And then for the height, this will change respectively. So I want to, again, go maximum height minus the rocket size, and then subtract maximum height. This will also need to be surrounded in brackets, minus the rocket size. So that's going to shift the whole rocket to the left, the amount of its size, and shift the whole rocket upwards the amount of its size. So let's run that and now take a look and see what that looks like. There we go, much better. So it's starting in view clearly, and it's going kind of more closely from corner to corner. Now we're ready to move on to the last part. In the last part, we are going to add that launch button to kind of control whether the animation is enabled or disabled. We're going to create a new composable for the button that controls this. So scroll down, create a new composable, do function, we'll call it the launch button composable. It'll take an animation state boolean, and so that'll basically denote like whether it's enabled or whether it's disabled. Then we need a function to toggle that state. So on toggle animation state, it'll be a function that takes nothing and returns nothing. And now open this thing up and we can write our launch button. So I'm going to create a row, and inside this row I'm going to add a modifier dot fill maximum width, and then do padding and 16 dp to just to make sure to fill the whole width, and then give it a little bit of padding so it's pulled away from the sides, and then do horizontal arrangement, do arrangement dot center, and I guess, yeah, just center's fine. Now we have two states, so we're going to have two states in our animation state, obviously, because it's a boolean. So just say if the animation state is enabled, then I can add a button. In this button, we want to toggle when we click it. So just do on toggle animation state. And inside of this, we will create a text composable. And when the animation state is enabled, then we want to show stop. So while it's enabled, the button should say stop, because if I click it, then it'll stop. Now I want to add another argument to this button composable. This other argument will be changing the colors. So I'm going to do button defaults dot button colors, and change the background color. So background color equals color dot red, and let's change the content color to color dot white. So the stop button will be red with white writing. I think that'll look much better. Now otherwise, so else, and let's do the same thing. So I'm actually going to copy this button. It's going to be almost exactly the same. Just delete colors, and instead of having stop, have launch. So if the animation state is not, if the animation is not running, the button should say launch, and then that will launch our rocket. All right, so scroll up and go to the rocket composable. Now this rocket composable is going to take a new argument. We'll do is rocket enabled, and that'll be a Boolean. Now we have a third kind of state that we're going to need to handle here, because currently there's really only two states for the rocket, which is defined by the engine state. So it's either like flame to the right or flame to the left. But if the animation hasn't started yet, we have a third state where there's no flame. So how can we handle that? We're going to write an if statement at the top here. So if the animation is not enabled, so I can say is rocket enabled. If it's not enabled, then I want to set the resource equal to painter resource. And again, that A is very strange. r.drawable.rocket initial. That is the initial state of the rocket. And then do modifier equals modifier.offset, and just set the position of this thing. So the X position is fine. It starts at 0 already, but we want to set the Y position to the maximum height minus the rocket size. So notice here, we're not animating anything. Now in the else case is where all the animations are going to happen. So basically everything that we were doing before, both the animations, the image, everything, copy that. Whoops, actually not the image. I want to cut out the image and put that down below. And that should be pretty much it. So we created this is rocket enabled Boolean. If it is not enabled, we set that rocket initial painter. We set the modifier to never change. It's just going to sit down in the bottom left corner. Otherwise, we have our animation stuff, which is inside the else statement. Then we have our rocket image down below. So pretty straightforward. I think there should be no kind of surprises there. Now we need a way to kind of toggle this state. This can be done pretty simply with a remember and a mutable state object. So just say value animation state equals remember, and do mutable state of, and we'll just say false. Get that remember import. So that'll denote whether it's enabled or whether it's disabled. Now I can just do is rocket enabled, pass animation state dot value, and down below I can add our launch button. So just do launch button, and we have of course the animation state. So animation state dot value, and then on toggle, what are we going to do? We're going to do animation state dot value equals not animation state dot value. So it's just going to toggle to whatever the opposite value is. And here, let me just kind of clean this up to make this look a little better for you guys. There we go. That should be it. That should be everything that we need to do. Let's run it and take a look. All right, time to test. Let's press launch, and boom, our rocket is flying through space. Look, it's just going to repeat over and over and over again. Too bad it never actually gets to its destination. You know what? I'm starting to feel bad for this rocket. Let's stop it, because it's not going anywhere. That's it for the video. Hopefully that showed you a good introduction to the new animations API, the new changes as of Jetpack Compose Beta 01. As I said, it's changed pretty drastically since I think it was Alpha 10 or 11 when they updated it before, from kind of the more verbose way that they used to do the animations. It's much simpler now. I give it a thumbs up. Love it. Now, if you want to know more about Jetpack Compose or see a more realistic, real project that you can get your hands on, head on over to codingwithmitch.com. I have a beginner course that you can take a look at that is completely free. That's also on YouTube. I'll show you how to build a recipe application with a real API that I actually built. So it's going to hit the network, get real network data, display that network data using Jetpack Compose. And then when you're done with that one, you can go and take the advanced course. The advanced course is just a continuation of that course, but it adds a lot more advanced features like a caching layer, use cases, hilt for dependency injection. We have a compose only navigation system. We have unit tests for those use cases. It is a thing of beauty. I highly recommend you going and checking out this course. As always, do not forget to leave a like. Do not forget to leave your engagement. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.